Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to discuss a technique that is, well, it's been covered before, but I'm surprised how few developers actually use it, and it can have a significant performance impact, improvement on the overall responsiveness and especially loading time of complex forms in particular. And I've done this with a number of my clients over the years, and now it's more or less become a standard practice. Let's just look at a form. I've created a very simple mock-up here, but you just have to consider that this, with more complex forms, only gets more and more of an impact. If we just look at a very simple form, what I've done here is, as you can see, I have different tabs, and this is very typical of any advanced form to try to compartmentalize the information and make it a little bit more digestible, reduce the amount of scrolling, right? We use a tab control. This also has a downside. It's a positive and a negative at the same time, that a lot of especially novice developers will go way overboard and basically stuff all of their database on one form because they can do it. But this is a big no-no, because now you're loading, when you load the form and all these subforms, you're loading literally all your information. And that takes time, that takes resources, that hits the network. You just have to think about this. And if you've got 20 users, 50 users, 80 users, you see the impact that this can have overall. And on each individual PC, obviously, if they're loading all this information, the load time of that form, instead of being a split second, can now become 5 seconds, even 10 seconds or more. And I've seen it. I've dealt with such forms. So they may be very practical because, oh, I have everything accessible where I need it, but it's impractical in the sense that realistically, most users go into a form, they don't need to see everything. They're not going to use everything. They're only going to need the one specific subject or category that they're in there to look at. So in this context, what I'm showing you here today, it's a very simple demo. Let's not kid ourselves. But as you can see here, I have a customer form, and then I have two other tidbits of information that I'm tracking. I have orders, and then I have general information. In this case, it's email addresses. But general information could then have addresses, could have contacts. You can go on and on and on. You get the general idea. So by default, I'm on the order page. So it makes perfect sense that obviously I'm loading the customer and I'm loading the order information. But why would I load anything else? So in this context, the emails, unless the user actually wants that information. Okay, it's not information that they need every single time they log into this form. So why would I go and pull that information, hit the network, slow down the load time of my form, if it realistically isn't something they're going to necessarily need? Now, we click on the form, the tab, and yes, it's available to me. But what you don't know, what's happened behind the scenes, is this was loaded dynamically. When I opened the form, there was nothing there. I'm going to jump for 2 seconds here. I'm just going to come and I'm going to comment out some code. Okay, don't worry about it. We're going to look at it in 2 seconds. Let's close this guy down. Yeah, we're going to save it. Now let's open it again without that code. And I'm going to prove my point. There is nothing on that tab, or that page, should I say. So it really is that code I just commented out that controlled that information actually loaded. So that's why we're loading subforms dynamically. Upon request, what request? Upon clicking on, in this case, a tab page. So basically, when the form loads, it loads everything that needs to be loaded visually because, yes, the order page is the default page, so I need to load it. But I don't need to load any other subsequent tabs unless the user actually clicks on them and says, yeah, I want to see that information for what I'm doing now. So we reduce to a minimum, only loading the main form and this one subform. So how does it work? It really is simple. Going to come here, undo this. Let's start with the form design for 2 seconds, and then we're going to look at the actual code that makes it dynamically load. So as you can see here, by default, whatever is visually going to be there by default, that I'm going to set up like a traditional form, subform, as you can see. We have a source object, master link. Okay, that's all standard, nothing revolutionary there. But where things change is any other page, any area that may be hidden. So I'm using the tab control here, but it can also be there are other times where I've seen developers use certain areas where it only becomes visible when a user clicks on a button or performs a certain action, causes an after update, then something else becomes available. So you could use the same principle on that type of thing as well. But I'm using the tab control, so let's keep going. So here you'll see what I would do normally is you do your normal setup, yes. And then what you're going to do is you're actually going to remove the source object. So now you've got this unbound subform, but it's got nothing. It's absolutely nothing. So if we open it up, it loads properly, yes, okay? But in the actual design, there's nothing there. Now you do have to be careful, and that's why what you saw before happened, is if you do any changes when the form is live, and then you save those same changes, well then the source, right here, the source object gets overridden and saved again. So because of that, then I'm using two events. I'm using the form open, and I'm saying that subform, we're putting the source object as nothing. So even if it does technically have a value, before it loads, so as soon as this main form opens, I'm clearing it out. So even if there was a value, it makes no difference. But a lot of developers I know that use this technique don't do that extra step. I do. But where it all really happens is right here. We're going to use the tab control change event. So we come here to the tab control events, the change event. And then basically what I do is I use a select case based on the name of the page. You can do it on the index number if you want, if you're comfortable doing that. I just find this a lot easier to read and follow, especially when I'm looking at this down the road, 6 months, 3 years, 10 years, whatever the case may be. It just makes it a lot easier. So the first page, right? Page orders, that I don't need to do anything because we're leaving it. We're not blanking out the source object. We want it to display by default, okay? However, the second page, the page information, is the one we actually want to process or do something. So that's why you'll see here, page orders, as I said, it's the default one. So we do nothing here. I've left it there just to show you, but we've commented out we don't need it. What we're interested in, like I said, is the page information. And what I'm doing there is I'm then going and taking the actual subform itself, customer email, that's the name of the subform. So I'm coming here and I'm taking with that subform. Let's first look, is there a source object defined? Has this code already run? Because basically if there's already a source object, so it's not a length of 0, well then it just keeps going. There's nothing to do. Okay, so we already have a source object. It's already bound, nothing to do. But in the case where there is no source object, then we're going to come here and we're going to define the source object as the name of the subform we're wanting to bind to it. Now in this case, because of the way I work, everything name-wise matches up. It just makes everything much easier to follow along. But if you needed to, you just come back here to your data, come here and find out which one am I, okay, I was wanting to bind it to this. Yeah, that's the right one. Then you could copy that, come into your VBA, just so you're 100% sure you're getting that name correct, okay? Now what you'll also notice here is I've added here the link child and the link master. Now let's go back here. What am I talking about? These two properties right here. But the way I do it, the way I develop it, is I initially bind the subform properly. So these properties are already defined properly, okay? So in reality, I don't need these two extra lines. But it also doesn't hurt. If you want to be 100% sure that everything is perfect, you can define the source object and also define those two extra properties with the proper linking field. So primary, key foreign, key normally. But as I say, In a properly set up scenario, this isn't strictly necessary, okay? But it doesn't hurt to include it. So we've done that. What we've done, let's just review very, very quickly. When the form opens, before anything else happens, we're clearing out that control source. That way that subform on the second tab does not open, does not load, should I say. Then what we do is we react to the user actually changing tabs, changing pages on the tab. And basically we come and we look, okay, did he select the specific page that has that subform? If it did, then we come and we look, does it have a source object already? No. Okay, then we define our source object. And it will only do this the one time. Every other time it's already going to have a source object defined and it just skips over it. So it's only that initial load that occurs. And that's literally all there is to making this dynamically load. So now we know there's nothing there, but yet when I click on it, it appears just fine. And now I come back here, this stays obviously, we click it, there's nothing to update, so it's still present, so it just remains there accessible to the user. But imagine a form that has here, you know, contacts, address, all extra, more forms. Imagine you've got 8 or 10 pages on this tab control, each with multiple subforms. Imagine the number of subforms, the amount of data you can reduce in that initial load for no reason. And it can, I'm not joking, have drastic performance impacts. And I'll even push it a little further. One of my biggest databases that I ever created was a multilingual thing that did dynamic translation on the fly. And so you think of loading subforms, and now you're processing also dynamically translating all the labels, all the controls, all the drop downs, all the multi-select lists. You get the idea where this goes. And by doing dynamic, I reduced the load time. It was astronomical. And I brought it basically up to a split-second load time from, I forget what it was, 27 seconds initially. And I brought it down to a fraction of a second. So this approach of dynamically loading subforms can be truly a lifesaver, a game changer for those heavy forms. Now, if we're talking something like this, where you only have 2 subforms, is it really going to be a big change in performance? No. Okay. Like I said, this really is for the heavy forms and subform scenarios. Does it hurt to do this? No, not at all. As you saw, the code is so minimal. This is, at the end of the day, this is all we're talking about. Okay. That code makes it dynamic. And if you do this from the start, when you start developing, as you move forward in your development, and as these forms get more and more complex because users and clients ask you to add more and more to them, you're already set up. You're already optimized. So, you know, it saves you having to go back and revisit some of this stuff if you start off from day one with this type of mentality in the back of your head. Okay, I'm going to stop there. I just thought this was one of these truly valuable tips, something really useful to be aware of, and that, yeah, it's out there, but sadly, most developers don't know of it, don't use it. I don't know why, but it really, really is a truly valuable thing, a valuable approach to encompass in your development in Microsoft Access. I'm stopping there. Have a great day. We'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.